Welcome to another episode of the Feature Presentation Podcast, where every week we take a deep dive into the trenches of independent filmmaking. I'm your host, Derek Diamond, and I've been really excited for this particular episode ever since we booked our guest for this week. She is a talent agent and entrepreneur, founder of the Jackson Agency. She's also been featured in the New York Times and other various media outlets. And in December of 2021, she was elected as the first Black woman to the board of directors at the Association of Talent Agents. It is my honor and privilege to welcome Miss Tiauna Jackson. Tiauna, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Derek?
I'm fantastic. As I said, I've been, ever since we booked this interview a few weeks back, I've been really excited to chat with you because, one, your story is extremely fascinating. I think the cause that you've been kind of the champion of since you founded the Jackson Agency has been really inspiring. And so I've been podcasting now for 9 years, and I've interviewed directors, actors, producers, but I've never interviewed a talent agent until tonight. So I'm really excited to chat with you.
Awesome. I'll tell you everything I know.
So I want to get started with a little bit of your backstory because, I tell people almost ad nauseum on the show that there's not really a, how-to guide to get into the film and entertainment business. So what made you want to get into the business?
Unfortunately, it was out of necessity. When I was in college, we were still shooting on film. And so if you didn't have at least $10,000 to buy the film, you were not making the film. And so then coming back in my early 30s, we've now started to switch to DSLR. And I had two actresses I had cast in a web series that I was shooting. I overheard them saying that they were still having trouble finding an agent. And so I looked into everything, had some unpleasant experiences and really created this agency out of necessity. So it was born to serve the underestimated, the underrepresented, and the underserved. And we turn 8 August 1st.
Does it seem like it's been 8 years?
It feels like 42.
I feel like, and I was having this conversation, on a previous episode, for those who have been in the industry, for as long as you have, on one hand, it can feel like you just started yesterday, but when you go through as much as you have, because the film and entertainment, like it seems like a glamorous job, but there's a lot of grind and a lot of tears shed, a lot of sweat, a lot of hard work. It's like that graphic I've seen on social media sometimes where it's like the tip of the iceberg and you see it's, success is pointing to it. And then underwater it has, sacrifice, hard work and all this stuff. So I can definitely understand.
Yeah. Shark infested waters.
For sure. So you mentioned it becoming, a necessity. What were some of the early struggles you had, with starting the Jackson Agency? Because you had no experience being an agent. So what were some of the early struggles and some of the early lessons that you learned?
Yeah, frankly, I was scrutinized far more than any other person would have been, even though I am more knowledgeable than most agents. So I had to constantly explain my educational background, talk about my expertise, because not only am I an agent, I'm also a creator. I'm a filmmaker as well. So I can literally run distribution off a power plant. I spent 1.5 years at a vocational school running 4/0 and 2/0 banded cable off a generator and calculating loads, so I'm technically proficient, like a jack of all trades, but a master of none. I know a little bit about everything. So over the years, I've been able to help clients figure out, hey, your white balance is off when you're shooting, do this, These are things that most agents don't even comprehend. And so what I lacked in previous agency training, I made up for with technical and vocational skill set and know-how.
Well, you bring up a great point too, because I've had this conversation as well that, you shouldn't focus on just being good at one thing. What's great about the film industry is there's so many things that you can learn, and you never really know what, one particular thing or even a collection of things, like you mentioned, being technically efficient and how that helped you when you first became an agent. You never know where you being even at least decent at something can ultimately help you. So I think, everybody who's an actor should at least have a basic knowledge of what goes on behind the camera. And vice versa, because film is such a collaborative experience.
And with that, I've also been a staunch advocate for actors should learn how to write. When you start creating your own stories, you hear that little voice in your head. And to me, it's going to translate into being a better actor because you're going to be able to kind of figure out that tone, that pacing, that delivery that maybe the writer or the director is looking for with that character delivery.
Absolutely, and that's what's great about the writing aspect. I'm not an actor, but I've written a couple of scripts. I've directed a short film. I'm about to direct my second. It's so much helpful whenever you do the writing process because you can really get into that character's head. What's great about the writing process too is that if a film is like a sandbox and there are like different toys in the sandbox, you're the one who builds the actual box that the other toys are in.
Very true.
Yeah. So, as an agent goes, because I will admit I've taught with agents with booking guests for this podcast, other shows that I've done. What exactly goes into being an agent? Like, what kind of resources do talent agents provide, and what kind of resources do you provide specifically?
Yeah, we're a unicorn, so I'll just give my POV and perspective because what we do is definitely not normal, right? So for us, there are various softwares that we have to subscribe to. You have your licensing fees, your bonding fees, and then you have various franchises that you're expected to join to solidify your legitimacy. So there's a lot that goes into it, not only just building a roster from scratch, but then building relationships with producers, directors, casting directors, showrunners, if you can even get a hold of them. It's, there's so many political aspects to it. And then you're also wrangling talent at the same time. You're essentially the agent, the manager, the attorney, the therapist, if you will. Creatives are a handful. Doesn't matter what they are, whether they're a makeup artist to an actor to even a writer. And so agents are that third party, that intermediary between the production company or the studio, me in the middle, and then my client. And I have to be able to deal with the business aspect and then also deal with the talent wrangling aspect of corralling them and getting them where they need to go.
Well, I think that's also something that a lot of people, especially those who are on the creative and the acting side, they don't think about, is that there is a business side of it. It may not be the sexy or glamorous aspect of the industry that people know about, but it is a very important one that, and as you mentioned, you have to be a part of. But what were you mentioned? The Jackson Agency specifically being kind of a champion for the underdog and those that you have more diverse clients. Do you feel like the industry has gotten better since you started the Jackson Agency as far as being more diverse?
No. And I can tell you this as somebody who sets as the only Black woman in a room full of white people. It is not. They will put out PR statements that make it appear as such, but I am living proof that it is not.
Yeah, and I heard you say this in a previous interview, and I agree 100% that I think for change to really happen, it's got to happen at the top, because everything happens at the top and trickles down. You mentioned that I think it was 90% of executives are still Caucasian, especially Caucasian males.
Yeah. C-suite executives are primarily Caucasian male. Certain studios, I meet more Caucasian women, actually. I had one instance at a studio where the physical production team was very diverse, so that was delightful. And then met another studio's development team, a few executives there are Black women, but for the most part, it's very rare that I walk into a meeting and there's someone in the room that looks like me.
That's a shame.
Yeah, but it's not even from the top down, Derek. It's consumers, because at the end of the day, these studios are existing because we're paying them, right? We're paying $7.99 a month for access to this IP that they've created, and so if consumers start demanding that internally, then you'll have change, because shareholders are who drive these mega corporations essentially, and they want their dividends, right? You saw what happened with Netflix when they made some changes and subscriptions dropped, so it's really about the general public holding these people accountable.
Yeah, and that's true because you can even talk about just movies in general. People complain about maybe that there's too many Marvel movies, or I'll use Star Wars as an example. If people didn't like the newer Star Wars movies, if you don't like something, if you want there to be change, I hate to say it, but there's got to be a financial effect as well. Like that's really what's going to bring attention, is when people start to lose money, because as bad as it is to say, money's everything.
In America, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, we've definitely learned that. But it's unfortunate, to hear you say that, because it's like as I've gotten older, and something that I've learned with film is watching films made by a primarily like a black writing staff, director, and crew and whatnot, to really learn about different cultures, not just the black culture, but other countries as well. I would love to see that more represented, and it's unfortunate that it's not going as quickly as I think we might hope.
Yeah, typical supply and demand. We've got to demand it.
That's very true. That is very true. To kind of transition back into your specific agent role, how hands-on are you? Because something you talked about is encouraging your clients to create their own content, because it's so easy to create your own content. Like, you can make films have been made with the iPhone. So is that something that you stress to your clients? I feel like if you take on a new client.
Yeah, we definitely at the top of the year told everybody we're shifting towards content creators, sports, and influencers, just because I see that's where it's going. You know, you look at TikTok, you look at Instagram, now Pinterest is apparently getting in the game. LinkedIn has their creator section. That's where it's headed, is that you're going to have to be that one-stop shop, essentially.
I'm not going to lie, and this is kind of me showing my age. I don't get TikTok. It's the first social media platform that came out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting old. Because, like, I don't have TikTok. I know it's very popular, and just, like, the number of, subscribers that even friends of mine have are just absolutely insane. And it makes me envious, because it's like, I do a show like this, and I do other shows that, I publish and promote incessantly, and don't get a ton of new subscribers, and then somebody makes a TikTok video of them dancing, and it gets hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah, it's important to know the origins, just like anything else. It was Musically, and then it rebranded as TikTok. And there's been some things, like T-Pain has talked about some things where, it can be used to increase the streams that are coming out on, like, Billboard and whatnot. So, a lot of these tools are designed to push entertainment, to new heights.
That's true. With the inclusion of social media, and just, with YouTube and other means to promote your content, where do you see that in maybe the next 5 to 10 years? Because, the technology has just advanced so quickly, and the fact that, iPhones have better cameras than, some cameras that were used to film, full length movies and shows 5-10 years ago. Where do you see, do you think TikTok is going to become even bigger, or do you think there might be some other platform that hasn't even been invented yet that's going to change the game?
No, TikTok and anything new that pops up, like I mentioned, Pinterest is getting into content creation as well. They're all going to head down that path, because they found that, videos, and we can go back to the days of Vine until Instagram killed it so they could do their thing, right? You're going to have these short bursts of content that are going to keep people's attention. People have gotten used to binge consuming things in small quantities, but like high doses, meaning 6 to 30-second intervals, but probably 1,000 different images being thrust on your eyeballs every day. So it's changing, the way we think and the way our attention span is held. Myself, I struggle just like trying to get through the first 3 pages of a script now. I'm like, so it's got to be, that teaser has to be amazing in order for me to want to continue to review that work.
I'm sure with as many scripts as you've read over the years, you can probably tell pretty quickly if it's going to be good or not.
I don't read them that much, because I'm a content creator. I'll read them if a client, like for instance, we have some studio pitch meetings, so I have to sit down and read them, to make sure everything's solid. But when I get submissions, when we started the literary division, which was also out of necessity in 2019, we made history becoming the Writers Guild of America franchise, not only in LA, but being the first franchise in Georgia, right? Because they had no support down there either. We had over 300 scripts that were of all different things, feature films, animated, 1 hour, half hour series. What I wanted to do and what we did, which in hindsight was a critical mistake, we read as many as we could fully and did full coverage on them and tried to give feedback to people because I understood, where the need was coming from. These were people that were kept out of these other agencies, but it was also frustrating because a lot of people don't take the time to research. And I call it the Issa Rae effect. If you don't actually go back and research Issa Rae's career, all you think is she did a web series and now she's on HBO. But that is not the case. She too was in development and grinding and hustling for over 5 years, doing what she needed to do to get to where she wanted to go. And so what happens is people will come in and say, well, I'm a writer, I have these great ideas, but they don't pause and take the time to go to school and learn how to properly format a script. There's a reason why script writing is different from novel writing. And so I encourage anyone who says, hey, I have great ideas, great stories, please take a year and just really learn how to properly write scripts, structure, all of those things, because it's going to help you in the long run.
Well, that's the great thing about technology today is you have Masterclass, you have YouTube, you have so many other resources to learn these things. Like 5 years ago, I didn't know how to properly write a script, but I have friends who have worked in the industry who've showed me the proper formatting. I've found numerous websites, and that's the great thing is you can really learn how to do anything. But I totally agree with you is that you can have the idea, but you gotta learn how to do it right in order to really get your foot in the door and grab someone like yours attention. So you mentioned branching out to Georgia, and you've branched out to other locations as well. How is dealing with those different markets, like a Georgia, when compared to Los Angeles?
Yeah, we expanded on the talent side. So going back, we started as talent only, 2014, and then 2019, I was in the New York Times, and that made every writer on the planet try to get a hold of me, even though we were not a literary agency, and they were very aggressive. And so somebody was just like, well, just read my script anyway. And I'm like, that's not how this works. So Jaya Thomas created Diverse Representation, which is a database of, agencies of color, Black agents specifically, whether they work at the bigger agencies or they have their own shop. And she met the committee of Black writers inside of the WGA, and they did an internal poll and found that 54% of their members still didn't have representation. And so I ended up discussing it with my agent, who you liaise with, Kendra. And I said, look, this fits what we're here to do. It's going to be a lot of work. There's no software site, there's no workflow that makes it easy to do literary. It's the hardest thing to build, to be honest. At least with the acting, we have 3 sites that we use regularly as agents. For the literary, it's cold emailing, cold calling, meeting people, doing festivals. It's all of these things. And so we had to really build that book of business again from the ground up. With that, we found it very challenging to find qualified writers. It's the pandemic hit and everybody decided, I'm going to write a script today. And so we took into account what happened, with that study, and we embarked upon that journey in September of 2019 and opened our doors. And then that created a lot of stress, a lot of stress. And it still has, but over the years, I've kind of learned to dial back, really close myself off too. As the face of the agency, I get the brunt of everything, and that's, those are the breaks. But I was actually told that, with the experiences I was having with really racism and microaggressions in the industry, I was actually advised to get out in front of it. And I had to sit with that because I know what it's like when you do that. I was a victim of hair discrimination. I did what we call the big chop back in 2013. And I was harassed for 3 days at work because my hair was an afro. And I knew what it was like to endure that. So I knew that going down this path was going to be challenging. It's been challenging, but at least we did, after year one, we received our first studio offer. So it can be done. It just, you have to kind of just, curl into a ball at night and probably drink heavily. So
I can imagine so. But I do have to ask, on a lighthearted note, once you did that New York Times story, how flooded was your inbox?
It was awful. Phones too. And the thing is, I answer the phone. And so I say this all the time, is that Dave Chappelle skit. I don't like people playing on my phone. I do not like people playing on my phone. And a lot of people play on the phone and I don't have time, So it was rough. But yeah, and I couldn't service everyone. I mean, you have some people who try to guilt trip you, I had one guy call once and say that, he needed me to shop his script to Snoop Dogg and T.I. And I'm like, I don't even have access to Snoop Dogg and T.I. Like, we're not traveling in the same social circles, right? And so he's like, well, I'm Black, and so you're supposed to help me. It's like, I can't help you if you can't even help yourself. And I think that's the misconception, is people think that this agent is supposed to just shepherd you right into success. And all we are is an intermediary to say, okay, these materials seem good. I've built a good relationship over here at Fox. Let me see if Fox would be interested in this project. That's all it is. I cannot force anyone to read anything, take a meeting, do any of that. All I can be is that neutral third party that is approved to send materials over without, any issues legally.
I just love how they just assume that, oh, you have Snoop Dogg on speed dial. Just let me shoot him a quick text and we'll get in touch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we know each other from way, way back.
I would say the only celebrity that, well, one, I'm related to Roy Ayers, the world-renowned xylophonist. But I would say the only other celebrity that I'm definitely related to distantly is Samuel L. Jackson, because we have the same penchant for curse words.
I love that. Yeah, he's one of my favorite actors. He like, you could put him in anything and I will watch it because he is in it. Like, he's just that entertaining. Like, he's one of those actors that as soon as he comes on screen, he just commands your attention, whether it's Marvel or something else.
Yeah, Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of my favorite movie experiences was just like getting with a bunch of friends, having a few drinks and watching that movie. It was fun. But you mentioned, a lot of actors just assume that, oh, I have an agent, they're supposed to do all the work, but you still got to put in the work yourself. And I can imagine, say, if like somebody wants to play, an action star, but they have zero athleticism whatsoever. Like, it's almost like they expect you to be a miracle worker.
Yep, true story. That's happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about 10% people. At the bigger agencies, we had this thing that they could do with packaging and these 333s and all this stuff where they could, take 3% of the budget and, as an executive producer, hook you up with one of their cinematographers, attach a couple of actors, package it up and get it pushed through. But ultimately, it's commission only. And so it makes it very, very hard, where I'm grinding 24/7. It's like today I had meetings, emails, all kinds of things that I did, and we generated $0 because there were no sales today. And nobody thinks about that. And so that's also what I try to make everybody cognizant of, is like, for instance, you see these commercials on TV right now. If they don't have a celebrity in it, odds are those actors that you don't know, they're only making $500. $500 to $700 is what they're making to be in that commercial. An agency gets 10 to 20% of that. You do the math. $50 is not going to do anything other than pay for the pound of king crab that I murdered before I hopped on your show.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Andre Doesn't Know, who is watching. He says that you're his friend, and he mentions the motorcycle story.
Which motorcycle story?
The comment just says the motorcycle story.
I don't know. He's going to have to beg that up for me. Because I ride motorcycles, and we have a motorcycle club and a nonprofit dedicated to preserving the history and the legacy of the Buffalo Soldier. So I'm going to need you to beg that up for me, Andre.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll throw it in the chat here in just a few seconds.
Oh my God, I know what he's talking about. Oh God, okay. I was livid. I'm often livid because people do things that are just so unsafe. There's this thing called precision driving in the industry. Okay, a lot of people think it means Jake from State Farm. I drive well. It's actually stunt driving. And so we had a commercial that came out where they needed a stunt driver to, what they'll do is to get around paying all the extra money is these advertisers will go and hire an actor that is stunt certified and pay them 500 and give them a line, right? So then the guilds are off their back. There's so many terrible things that happen in this industry, to say the least. And one of my clients, we checked her profile. She had these things checked off. And so she ended up getting submitted, and then they wanted her, but they needed more proof about certain things. And so I had asked her, you know, where did you train for your stunt driving? Like, I don't have it in your file, but we double checked your profile. You got it checked off twice here that you're a precision driver and that you can also do motorcycle stunts. And she responded and told me the streets.
The streets.
Yep, she learned in the streets.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. This is my life. Dozens upon dozens of stories where it's just strange stuff. Like what you were saying, where I had an actress who told me she wanted to be the next Angelina Jolie. She wanted to do, you know, the Laura Croft stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, did you take any stunt classes? No. Weapons training?
Like weapons training? What's that?
Yeah,
what's weapons? Yeah. It's like, am I supposed to do that? Like it's what I mean by like you've still got to put in the research and put in the work yourself. You know, that way they almost give you the tools to get their name out there for them to potentially succeed. Like
that's exactly what
you still gotta put in that hustle. Like it's a nonstop grind. Yeah. It's like even, like all entertainment is like that. Like even this podcast is a grind, like I'm looking every day to find new guests, to find for the show. Like it's a nonstop thing. Yeah. People in the chat are loving that story, by the way.
I'm sure they are, but I mean, I do a lot of humor, it's a Black thing, right? We laugh through our trauma, but at the end of the day, someone could have been killed. Like if you can't, what I'm saying? If you're not properly trained, you could have wiped out everybody trying to do, a burnout on set. Like that's not cool, Yeah. So do better.
Yeah.
Please.
You mentioned that in addition to being an agent, you're also a content creator. How do you find the time to create your own content while balancing your job as an agent?
Sometimes I just do dumb shit early in the morning. I'll dance in my underwear and post it on TikTok. It's so easy. Content creation is subjective. It's anything going on a live stream. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be a full blown, feature film with credits and Foley and composition. It can be as simple as just putting your face in front of a camera and saying something and capturing people's attention.
Yeah, I don't think there would be much of a demand for me dancing on TikTok, but I
they love my uncoordinated stuff. I'll tell you that.
It can definitely be entertaining for sure. So I'm also curious, with you being a content creator, with you being an agent, your drive is just inspiring. Like when I read your story and leading up to doing this interview, like your story and your drive is inspiring to me. So I've got to ask, where do you credit getting that drive from? Is it from your parents? Is it from like a role model? Where did you learn to get your drive?
It's definitely a bloodline. It goes back several generations. My great aunt was the first Black woman to graduate from USC with a master's in social work. My grandfather on my mother's side was the first Black mechanic hired in LA County. My father was the first Black superintendent of a major manufacturing plant, to where when I was a little girl, he was attacked on the docks with a knife because someone got terminated for unsafe practices and they wanted to blame him as a superintendent, but they should have blamed themselves. So he now has 3 screws in his elbow permanently. Unfortunately and fortunately, it's just in the bloodline. It makes for great conversation, right? But then at the same time, a lot of these accolades that I've achieved have been in the last 3 years. So we're talking about 2019 through 2022. I'm making history. That's not good, right? Like we've been around long enough that I should not be the first to be doing some of these things that I'm doing, but I am. But it also comes with, it's not just me. I have a great team. The agents that I work with at my agency, they support me. Even my shenanigans, they put up with me when I'm hangry. So, it takes a village. No,
you're absolutely right. Ezra Jones in the chat says hi to you.
Hi, Ezra. We co-founded the Black Agents Network. We created a community for Black agency owners to lean on one another and support one another.
Oh, that's awesome. And you mentioned, you know, it's not good that you're the first one to really be doing this, but at the same time, it's good that someone is doing it. Like it's got to start somewhere, whether it's, you know, a few years ago or, you know, in 2019. So I give immense credit to you and your team because like I said, you know, in reading your story and your agency story, it's very, very inspiring what you guys do.
Thank you. The work is nowhere near done, but we're doing it.
Well, it's not going to happen overnight, but you know, as long as progress is made, that's the important thing.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that you were the first Black woman to be elected to the Association of Talent Agencies Board of Directors. Once you found out the result and found out that you were going to be on the board, what was your reaction?
I was actually shocked. I'm not going to lie. You have to run. So it's not just an appointment. You actually have to run for the slots. I think there are about a dozen slots. So I had to go to these same agencies that wouldn't hire me and say, hey, here's what I've already done for your organization as a member. But they asked me to run for the board. I'll be honest, when they sent the email out saying that you could run for the board, I deleted the email and forgot all about it because I was like, well, they're not talking about me. I know that much. And so they actually came and asked me to run. And I was like, ooh. And even the night before, I was still unsure. But then some friends of mine were like, no, you have to do this. We need this. And so I did a Hail Mary of a speech the night before the elections and placed 5th out of 12, which was amazing, actually. And here we are, 7 months in.
And what is your what goes into your role as a member of the board?
Well, the Association of Talent Agents is a professional trade organization. So we're all competitors, obviously, but we come under one banner for certain things like guild negotiations or just issues in general. And so that's what the organization is for. And so like any, nonprofit organization, you got to have a board of directors to oversee everything. And so that's what we do.
Nikki Wright in the chat says, hard work pays off and you have worked your ass off since 2014.
She has known me since I was 17. I'm 40 now, so yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And like I said, it's just really, really inspiring stuff. But as we start to wrap up here, I did want to ask you, and normally I ask, what is an example of what to do if you're a content creator, an aspiring actor? We mentioned, creating your own content on social media and whatnot. As someone who has experience doing it and you've been an agent for numerous years, what are some things that an actor should not do to get themselves noticed by an agent?
Don't bug them incessantly. Definitely do not approach me using African-American vernacular if I don't know you. Definitely do not send me a slave script. It's just mind your P's and Q's. With an actor, you want to have a decent headshot, resume, great training, improv, comedy, Meisner, those types of things, a dynamic reel, not just a compilation of every shitty student film you've been in, but something that actually really shows us your range. That's really the secret. Showing up on time, understanding the business, understanding the lingo. On the literary side, the same thing. If you can manage to place in like a Nichols contest or get some sort of fellowship, the ABC Writers Program, Nickelodeon, whatever it is, those are going to help you when you don't have a resume that's filled with, writing credits. And so there are things that I personally can do with people who have placed well in those high quality competitions, right? Any idiot can start a festival. I have a story about that. But you really want the ones that have value and names.
Yeah, I had a conversation with one of my filmmaker friends he runs a local film festival that's part of like a Comic-Con style convention that we have in town every year. And yeah, it's film festivals, like I think they're great and they can be a great resource if they're done correctly, but it's almost like everybody and their mother runs a festival now.
That part.
Yeah, because it's like when there's so many, it dilutes the meaning of the festival.
It does. And in some ways we can empathize with it of, well, maybe they couldn't get into Sundance, so they were like, hey, I'm going to do it. Or maybe they're in North Carolina and they needed to create a film festival because there was nothing there for them. So I can empathize with it, but at the same time, there are certain things that are going to hold weight. And like we started at the top of the show, this is a business. And that's really what it is. For you as a creator, it's hopes and dreams. But I'm telling you, when you seek out agency representation, it now becomes a job. It's a business. We're not handing out these Oscars because we just wanted to say, good job, George Clooney. We're handing out these Oscars because George Clooney has proven to be bankable. And that's really what it boils down to.
Exactly. In every aspect of the industry, it's ultimately a business, with festivals to acting, directing, agency, all of it. There's a business side to it, and yeah, it's not the most exciting thing, but it's arguably the most important thing. So it's like we've been saying, it's just something that you've got to learn and you've got to put the work in. And it's also where I think you really learn if this is what you really want to do. Because like, you can watch George Clooney or, like Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, other actors, and be like, oh, that looks like so much fun. I would love to do that. And then most people, when they see how much work goes in, they're just like, I'm good.
Yeah, that was the challenge when we first opened up shop on the talent side in Georgia. I was receiving emails from people who are like, "Well, I've been background in all four Marvel movies, and I've watched what they've done. I can do that, and I'm ready for an agent." And I'm like, "Did you miss the like 2 months of eating egg whites and like 20 meals a day and working out and doing wire works and all these things that these guys had to do so that when they got to set, all you saw was him throw a shield and jump off a green bag." You know what I'm saying? Like, it is not easy, and you're doing it for 16 hours a day. So yeah, frustration at an all-time high to say the least. But luckily, that market has grown. More agencies are off in there. Better talent pool. Better understanding of how things work now.
Yeah, it's definitely grown in the last several years. I can remember hearing of a couple of projects that were filmed out there, and then now it's like Hollywood East.
Yeah, it's tax credits. Like we said, it's about the money, but it's also about the money you can save. You're going to love it if you can put up 25 mil now, and the state's going to give it back to you, and all you had to do was make sure 60%, 70% of your crew was local hire. This stuff, that's the thing, is the stuff still casts out of LA and New York, what I'm saying? But they'll find some people local or can work as local and hire them and keep it moving. So
and I'll use Georgia as an example specifically, you may have a ton of clients or a bunch of clients out there. In the different markets, do you find that their goal is still to make it to LA because it's still looked at as like the hub of the entertainment world?
it has to be, because primarily Georgia is a feature film market. So it's going to be a constant, one and done, one and done. And so even if they do the handful of shows in Atlanta, once they max out, they're done. So they're often moving to LA. It's the same thing with New York. Once you do the dozen or so shows over there, you've got to go to another market. LA is still going to be number one, whether you love it or not. Everybody's headquartered there. We're headquartered there. It's where all the studios are. It's where all the executives are. It's where the writers' rooms are. So it's still going to be that number one market. People forget that production is like a little mobile infantry. They can go to Kentucky, film, and fly on back home. They're not necessarily going to stay there. Michigan found that out when they tore their draws. They thought, oh, everybody's here now. We've got the tax credits. You won't leave. As soon as they took the tax credits away, Michigan gone. Okay, like Michigan don't exist. They have no money. So LA, Hollywood feeds communities. That's what I'm trying to stress enough. I know here they're trying to do the tax credit. And what upset me is I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I'm an agent. I'm on the board. I'm well known in this industry. Let me help you guys. It's an all white panel. They wouldn't even return my emails or talk to me in the Zoom. And I'm like, you'll be lucky if this credit goes through, because the people involved with this are not diverse in any way, shape, or form. But you never know, it might go through. But they had to lobby. They had to raise like 30,000 to grease some palms to try to push the thing through.
That's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. Yeah. Yes. And I view that way about, Florida too. I live in Northwest Florida, and I think of, like Orlando, Tampa, even, in my area in the Northwest portion, there are some great locations that would make for great film locations, but it's like, it's still all about the money. It's about the tax breaks.
Florida is very challenging as well. Like we've had some projects that have tried to film there, and it's very hard to find the caliber of talent that you want because that's not its primary purpose. It's more of a retirement community and what used to be spring break, right? And so it makes it difficult. So then you're trying to get talent to drive in from like Tennessee and from Georgia and stuff like that. And so then that's increasing your costs. So it really is about, like what Tyler Perry did and creating his own space, working with them to get those tax credits, increase that revenue stream. And now you see other people trying to follow suit, but it can't be done everywhere. I hate to break it to you. Like, I don't ever see West Virginia being the hub of production. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to happen.
That would make for a great story, though. That like West Virginia becomes Hollywood East. Like that would be something out of the Twilight Zone.
That part.
Well, in closing, I always like to end the interviews with this. What is your favorite movie of all time?
I can't tell you because it's a security code, but it's one of my reset questions.
Gotcha.
But I will tell you one that actually really is my favorite. The Associate, actually, the remake of The Associate with Whoopi Goldberg. The premise is she's a Black woman, top of her game, and she gets shut out by white men. So she turns into a white man and outproduces all of them. And then they're like, who are you? And they offer her an award. And that's when she reveals she's Whoopi Goldberg.
I'll have to check that out. I've never seen that movie. You gave me something new to watch this weekend.
Great movie. Mantra.
Yeah. Do you have any website or social media you'd like to plug so the viewers and listeners can follow you?
Yeah, the website is just my name, TiaunaJackson.com. Social media, Tiauna Says. For the agency, everything's Jackson Agency. So on Instagram, Jackson Agency, Facebook, The Jackson Agency. Twitter is just me, TJ Agency. I'm very candid and honest and just live my life. I'm not like these other agents. So I warn you ahead of time about that. I will talk about things that bother me and impact me. And if you don't like it, cool, don't follow me. It's that plain and simple.
But I think we need more people like that, though, that, because you can't replace the value of like raw, honest emotion and answers. Like a lot of people can't handle that, but nothing's more pure than the truth.
True.
So that's yeah. So like I've enjoyed, from what little I've seen of you on social media, it's almost like a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I dig it. No, it's in an age where people are afraid to say the truth, I think it's very refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, I make the joke of, behind the candelabra, right? I'm behind the curtain, and I swear the further back I go, the more depressing it gets. It's like I spent an hour today doing another live stream about intellectual property because this woman has sued Quinta Brunson and Disney and all this alleging copyright infringement. So I actually spent the money to get the docket and dissected everything. And so it's interesting to see, IP theft or allegations of IP theft, knowing the things that we know. We had an incident with a casting director who said some things that are inappropriate, and seeing, who championed shutting him down versus who stayed silent. And so it's hard to exist in an industry that's been around for over 100 years and its foundation is rooted in Sambo. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, blackface, you know what I'm saying? And then you're in this thing and you're existing and you're trying to get people to have hearts and come around and understand that, you're hurting people, you're not helping people when you perpetuate stereotypes. And just the way that boutique agencies are perceived and the candid conversations that I have, it's very disheartening, I'm not gonna lie. But then you get small victories. We sell a show, a client, becomes a series regular, and so it's like that 42 years of pain, it goes away for 5 seconds because you're like, hooray, let's celebrate this client. And then next thing you know, you get another rejection and it's a cycle over and over and over again. So, the biggest thing I want to give anyone who creates content is copyright your stuff. Stay on top of your copyrights. It's not a WGA registration, copyright, okay? And, try not to screw people over. It's karmically, it's going to bite you in the butt in the end.
there's some people I know that still don't believe in karma, but I tell people it's like a boomerang. You throw it out there and it's eventually going to circle back and it's going to hit you either right in the face or right in the ass.
Yeah. Cosby and Weinstein are prime examples of how long that boomerang took to come on back around.
It might be an hour, it might be decades, but eventually it's going to come back.
You can be having the time of your life and all of a sudden, oops, you're gone. So, this industry's cutthroat. It makes sense. Everybody's fighting for a seat at the table and there are no seats, right? It's musical chairs with no chairs. They never put any out to begin with. So how are you supposed to sit? But I think that, if you continue to do the right thing, this is me trying to be an optimist for your show. If you continue to do the right thing, the universe will reward you.
I agree with that. I love it. But Tiauna, thank you so much for this chat. As I mentioned numerous times, I think what you and your team have been doing is inspiring. I hope that you continue to do what you're doing. I hope things will get better. Just thank you for being such an inspiration to me and to other content creators.
Thank you so much, Derek.
All right, let me play my outro music here. If you want to subscribe to the show, just check out linktree.com/featureprezpod. You can find links to all the social media information where you can listen to the podcast. And don't forget, we are live on YouTube every Monday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you once again to Tiauna Jackson, and we'll see you guys back here next week for another fun episode of Feature Presentation with Derek Diamond.